So you mentioned this new lease that everybody need to use. It was started from last year?
April 30th, 2018, yeah.
Okay. How is this form different from the previous form?
Well, there was no previous form, and that's the main reason for this form is because it is the form itself, and it comes with pages of attachments that basically advise landlords and tenants as of their rights, and I take it reflects an effort on the part of the government to sort of make landlords and tenants aware of what the limitations are on residential tenancies, so that you don't have all sorts of leases going around that are violated, and it creates more disputes and problems and issues before the board if you have all these various forms of leases that don't accurately reflect what you're allowed and not allowed to do. So by making everybody use this form that specifically says this is the stuff you're allowed to do, this is the stuff you're not allowed to do, then the idea is that people are supposed to at least come to the table with a good idea as to what their rights are.
What if, say, the tenant doesn't know that there's a new form, the landlord just used their own form? Is that something that would come back and become a disadvantage?
Well, it can be. I mean, not really, because there's a way to correct it. If for example, the landlord doesn't use the proper form, and the tenant, at any time can demand the proper form be used, and they have to give the landlord notice that they want the proper form, and the landlord, I think, has 21 days in order to provide the form. And then if they don't reply or they don't provide it within 30 days after that, the tenant can withhold the rent. And if they still don't provide it, I think actually it's 21 days to provide the lease, and then they can withhold the rent, I believe. And then 30 days after that, the rent up to a maximum of 1 month's rent that's been withheld is entirely forgiven. So, yeah, it's an easy way to lose a month's rent, not to provide the proper form.
Okay, so the landlord should use this new form.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, there's all sorts of organizations that will sell a whole bunch of additional clauses to the form, and like 27 pages of additional clauses and this type of thing. But in reality, there's some of them make sense, right? Like in apartment buildings, for example, rules about how you do laundry and all of this type of stuff, are actually quite useful. But there's not a lot that you're going to do in terms of increasing or reducing your rights by adding these various things to the form, in my own view. When push comes to shove and you're in front of the board, it's either a violation of the act and the person gets evicted, or it's not. And what the lease has to say has never been terribly relevant in that context. Like as I was explaining with smoking, if it disturbs people, you can throw them out. If the lease says you can't smoke, and if the lease says you can smoke and it disturbs people, you can still throw them out. And conversely, if it says you can't, you get the idea.
Right. So ultimately, is the act that is the grounds for eviction or judgment. Right?
Yeah, simple breach of a lease isn't grounds to terminate tenancy.
I see.